The airport glass reflected my face like a stranger's pale, cracked with disbelief. Behind it, I saw my son Ethan, his wife Vanessa, and little Ava waving their boarding passes, smiling like they hadn't just erased me from their lives. My suitcase stood by my feet, ticket in hand, heart in pieces. A message still blinked on my phone. Mom, plans changed. It's just the three of us this time. My world went silent. But what they didn't know was, they'd just handed me the one weapon I needed. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family, especially by the ones you thought would never hurt you. Sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from enemies. They come from the people sitting next to you at the dinner table. When I was younger, I used to think order could protect me. Balance the books, pay the bills on time, file the receipts alphabetically, life would stay under control. That belief followed me from my first accounting job to the home I built for my son. The house on Magnolia Street wasn't just wood and brick. It was the ledger of my life, every beam and window paid with sleepless nights and overtime hours. After my husband Richard passed away, Ethan was only 16. I remember sitting in that sterile hospital room, fluorescent lights humming above me, his hand limp in mine. When the doctor said we did everything we could, the sound didn't land. It just floated somewhere between my ears and my heart. Ethan cried for 5 minutes straight, then whispered, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll take care of you one day." I believed him. Years passed like folded calendars. I worked at a shipping firm downtown, crunching numbers while other people dreamed of retirement. My desk faced the window overlooking the harbor, but I rarely looked out. Numbers were safer than waves. They didn't change with the tide. Ethan grew up charming, restless, too smart for his own good. He majored in real estate, said he wanted to build an empire. What he didn't mention was that his empire would rest on my shoulders. When he brought Vanessa home for the first time, I could tell she was used to getting her way. Perfect blowout hair, manicured nails, expensive perfume that didn't belong in my old wooden house. She walked through every room like she was appraising it, not visiting. "This place has potential," she said with a smile that wasn't really a smile. I poured her tea and pretended not to notice how she glanced at the chipped edges of the cups. At dinner, she leaned close to Ethan and whispered something that made him laugh. I asked what was so funny. "Nothing, Mom," he said, still smiling. "Just inside jokes." That was the first time I felt like an outsider in my own kitchen. Still, I wanted to believe she'd make him happy. I helped them with the wedding, paid for half, and when they wanted to buy their first home, I offered mine as collateral. "It's just paperwork," Ethan said. "A temporary arrangement." I signed where he pointed. I didn't know that signature would one day become my weapon. There were good years, or at least what I thought were good. Dinners together, birthday cakes for Ava, Christmas mornings where Vanessa posed us for pictures that she later edited to perfection. But even in those moments, something always felt curated, controlled, like I was, an extra in the movie of their lives. Last Christmas, she gave me a spa voucher titled Senior Relax. Her smile was syrupy sweet as she said, "You deserve some rest, Maggie." The words landed like a blade disguised as a ribbon. Rest as in step aside. Rest as in fade out quietly. Sometimes I replay small memories and realize how loud they were. The time Ethan told me, "You don't have to worry about the bills anymore," and insisted on handling my mortgage payments. The time Vanessa said boundaries are healthy when I offered to babysit Ava. The way they started calling the Magnolia house our place, not Mom's place. I thought it was affection. It was ownership. Ava, sweet Ava, was my little light. She'd sneak into my room when they visited and whisper, "Grandma, Mommy says I'm too attached to you." I'd hold her tight and tell her love isn't something that runs out. She'd fall asleep on my lap, and I'd pray I'd never have to let go. I didn't know it then, but Vanessa was already planning their Langford Travels Company, a lifestyle blog that looked glamorous on the surface but burned money faster than it earned. She used words like brand partnerships and content strategy. All I saw were credit cards and unpaid bills. One night I heard them arguing in the driveway. Ethan's voice was low, desperate. "We just need more time." Hers was sharp as glass. "Time doesn't pay the mortgage, Ethan. Your mother's sitting on equity and she doesn't even use it." The next morning, he was all smiles again. "Mom, how about we refinance the house to get better rates?" I told him I'd think about it. But the seed was planted. The weeks before the Italy trip were a blur of excitement or pretense of it. Vanessa sent itineraries, matching outfits for family photos, and even talked about recording travel vlogs. I packed 3 new dresses, bought sunscreen, and told Sally, my neighbor, that this would be my first trip to Europe. "You deserve it," she said, hugging me tight. I can still hear the airport loudspeaker calling flight numbers that morning, smell the coffee from the nearby cafe, feel the warmth of Charleston sunlight on my face. I was early, of course. I'm always early. The crowd moved like a current, families, laughing children, tugging on suitcases, couples holding hands. I waited near the boarding gate, checking my phone for updates. None came until that message. "Mom, plans changed. It's just the 3 of us this time. We need privacy as a young family." At first I thought it was a joke. Then I looked through the glass wall and saw them at the check-in counter, Vanessa laughing, Ethan pushing the luggage cart, Ava holding her new pink passport. They didn't wave. They didn't even look my way. Something broke quietly inside me, not with noise but with finality, like glass cracking under pressure. When the plane took off, I stood outside on the curb watching it disappear into the sky. For 38 years I'd built everything around them. That morning I realized I didn't even exist in their plans anymore. But life has a strange way of balancing its own books, and soon the numbers would finally turn in my favor. The next few days after that airport humiliation felt like a fog I couldn't escape. I moved through my house like a ghost. The Magnolia house had never felt so large, so hollow. Every creak of the floorboard echoed with memories that suddenly felt one-sided. The laughter that once filled the kitchen was now replaced by the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock on the wall. I spent the first night sitting by the window, the one that overlooked the oak tree where Ethan used to climb as a boy. I remembered him waving from the top branch, shouting, "Look, Mom, I can see the whole world from here." He was fearless back then, before ambition turned him into someone I barely recognized. The next morning Sally came by with her usual knock, 3 quick taps, then 1 slow. "You didn't go?" she asked, looking confused, her eyes scanning the suitcases still by the door. "They went without me," I said simply. Her mouth fell open. "You're kidding." I handed her my phone and let her read the message. Her face hardened with disbelief. "Honey, that's cold. That's not just inconsiderate, that's cruel." We sat together in silence for a while before she said something that would change everything. "You know, I saw a bank envelope in your mailbox last week, looked like a mortgage notice." I frowned. "That must be a mistake. My house is fully paid off." That night, curiosity and unease gnawed at me until I tore open the envelope. "Reminder payment overdue, second notice." My name was there in bold print, alongside a loan number I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. I drove to the bank the next morning. The teller smiled politely until I mentioned the loan, then her expression shifted. "Oh, Mrs. Langford, that's under your name and Mr. Ethan Langford's. Mortgage account opened 7 months ago." My ears rang. I forced my voice to stay calm. "Could you please show me the signature on that file?" She hesitated but eventually turned the monitor toward me. And there it was. My name, my handwriting, or something close to it. But I knew every loop of my own pen, every slant. This wasn't mine. It was a copy. When I stepped outside, the humid Charleston air felt suffocating. The world blurred as if the summer heat had melted it. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, and whispered to myself, they wouldn't dare. But they had. That night I couldn't sleep. I poured myself a glass of wine and walked through the living room, touching the furniture like it could answer me. The pictures on the mantel stared back, the wedding photo of Ethan and Vanessa, smiling under a string of fairy lights. The photo from Ava's first birthday. The last Christmas we spent together. Each one now looked staged, a set built for a play I was never really part of. The next morning I called Gregory Shaw, an old acquaintance from my firm who'd become a property attorney. When I explained the situation, he sighed heavily. "Maggie, this happens more often than you think. Family trusts. Joint accounts. Someone slips in an extra page during signing. You wouldn't be the first to get blindsided." "Can you check the legality of this mortgage?" I asked. "Of course. Send me the details and give me a couple of days." Those 2 days felt endless. I wandered around the house like it was a stranger's. Every picture frame, every chair carried traces of betrayal I hadn't seen before. When Gregory called back, his tone was grave. "It's bad, Maggie. The loan was taken against your house as collateral. Signatures appear consistent enough for the bank to believe they're yours. I can tell it's forged, but proving it will take work. And the funds went to a company called Langford Travels." The name made my stomach twist. "That's Vanessa's blog." Not anymore, he said. It's been converted into an LLC, registered under her name and Ethan's. I hung up and stared at the family photo on the wall. I remembered Vanessa's smile when I helped them with their down payment 5 years ago, her gentle voice saying, "We'll make you proud, I should have known." That kind of sweetness always hides something bitter. I went to Sally's porch that evening. She handed me a cup of iced tea, watching the color drain from my face as I told her everything. "You know what you need," she said finally. "A plan. Not revenge, not yet. Just clarity. Find out what they did, then decide." That night, I opened my old ledger notebook, the one I'd used back when I still worked. My fingers traced the neat columns of figures, the ink faded but precise. I began writing, dates, amounts, accounts, questions, my own private investigation. It was almost comforting how the structure of numbers steadied me. 2 days later, curiosity turned into obsession. I visited the cafe by the river where Ethan used to meet clients. I knew Vanessa often worked there too, her creative space, she called it. That afternoon, as I sat behind the paper walls separating tables, I heard her voice unmistakable. "Relax, Carter. She won't find out. The property is under both names legally, it's airtight." A man's voice replied, low and cautious. "Vanessa, if the audit catches this, it'll be on you." She laughed softly. "By then, the debt will be moved under the travel company. Trust me, Ethan's mom is harmless. She still writes checks." I gripped my cup until my knuckles went white. Harmless. That word stung more than the betrayal itself. When I left the cafe, the afternoon sky had turned gray and rain was starting to fall. Each drop hit my skin like punctuation marks to a story I no longer recognized. I walked home slowly, soaked and shaking, but something inside me had hardened. I didn't know how yet, but I knew this wasn't over. I would find a way to reclaim everything they'd taken, not just the house, but the dignity they thought they could erase with a text message. That night I sat in the dark living room, watching lightning flash across the windows. My reflection appeared for a split second, hair, wet eyes sharp. For the first time in years, I didn't look tired. I looked awake. Somewhere between the thunderclaps a thought surfaced. They think I'm weak because I love them, but they've mistaken my silence for surrender. I closed the ledger, marked the page with the word begin. The morning after that storm, I woke to sunlight cutting through the curtains, too bright, too cruel. I made coffee the way I always did, but it tasted metallic bitter. Maybe it was just me. My body moved through the motions, pour, stir, sip, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. The numbers wouldn't stop lining up in my head, the loan amount, the payment dates, the name Langford Travels. I called Ethan. He didn't answer. The call went to voicemail twice, then on the third attempt he finally picked up. "Hey Mom, can we talk later? We're kind of busy." "I went to the bank," I said, skipping the pleasantries. Silence followed. "Bank," his voice sharpened slightly. "Why?" "To check on a mortgage I never took. The one with my name on it." Another pause, longer this time. Then a breath. "It's just a small loan for the business. We meant to tell you." "You meant to tell me." After using my house as collateral, I asked quietly, "Mom, please." "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." He hung up. I stood there with the phone still pressed to my ear, hearing only the faint buzz of disconnection. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, from clarity. The next day, Vanessa called instead. Her voice was sugar-coated, calm, rehearsed. "Maggie, I think there's been some confusion." "Confusion," I said. "Between what and what? Theft and fraud." She gave a small laugh, the kind you hear from people who think they're smarter than you. "You signed the document, remember? It was during the refinancing. You probably don't recall the details." "I recall perfectly," I said, "especially the part where I never signed anything." Her tone changed, colder, sharper. "You're making this unnecessarily complicated. Ethan's under a lot of stress. The company is growing and he's doing his best. And you," I asked, "what are you doing?" "I'm protecting our family's future," she said, and then hung up. That phrase, "our family's future," echoed like a curse. I realized then that when she said our family, she didn't mean me. Over the next few weeks, small humiliations stacked like unpaid bills. Ethan stopped answering calls. Vanessa posted pictures from their work trip to Turks and Caicos, tagging luxury brands, smiling like the world was hers. And beneath the photo, the caption read, "Building dreams together." I stared at it until the words blurred. Then came the envelope from the bank again. Final notice. The mortgage was in arrears. I called Gregory immediately. "We need to move fast," I said. He replied, "I'll start drafting a petition to freeze the property transfer. Don't talk to them until we have leverage." Leverage. It was such a cold, clean word, but it steadied me. That night, Sally dropped by with a folder in hand. "You'll want to see this," she said. Inside were printouts from the county records. "Vanessa filed an amendment last month. She added herself as a co-trustee on your property." My throat tightened. "Can she do that?" "Not legally," Sally said, "but she did." Something in me shifted. I wasn't the woman waiting by the window anymore. I wasn't the mother hoping for an apology. I was a woman preparing for war, quiet, methodical, inevitable. I began documenting everything: dates, messages, bank statements, screenshots of Vanessa's posts bragging about financial independence. I stored it all in a red binder labeled proof. One evening, I overheard my neighbor's teenage son mowing the lawn next door, his earbuds blasting music. The smell of fresh-cut grass mingled with the memory of Ethan at that same age, pushing the same mower, waving through the sweat, grinning when I handed him lemonade. "One day I'll buy you a better one," he used to say. Now that promise felt like a cruel joke. But something else happened that week, something unexpected. Gregory called and said, "Maggie, I might have someone who can help." Help how he's a private investigator, used to work in insurance fraud. Now freelances for property disputes. Name's Ruben Perez. He's discreet. Ruben showed up the next day at my porch, mid-40 seconds, calm eyes, no nonsense. "You've been taking advantage of Mrs. Langford," he said after reviewing the papers, "but they're not as clever as they think." He flipped through Vanessa's LLC filings. Langford Travels has already triggered red flags for federal auditors. Someone's been laundering money through personal real estate assets. If we can tie the mortgage fraud to that, they're finished. My pulse quickened. "And what do you need from me?" He smiled faintly. "Patience and trust." For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of something I'd lost control. That night, I sat on the porch with my tea growing cold, watching the fireflies flicker through the magnolia trees. I whispered to the darkness, "You wanted a future without me, Vanessa. Let's see how you handle the one I build for myself." Ruben's plan unfolded like a chess game, one careful move at a time. I wasn't used to deception. Numbers had always been my truth, but this wasn't about lying. It was about mirroring the game they had started, using their own greed against them. For weeks we met in quiet corners of Charleston diners, parking lots, even the church basement after Sunday service. He'd spread papers across the table, loan records, shell company names, wire transfers. "They've been moving money through 3 accounts," he said, tapping the page. 2 under Ethan's business, 1 under Vanessa's personal blog. It's classic layering small amounts, repeated transactions. Eventually they try to flip the property to make it look clean. "Flip my house," I murmured, letting the words sink in. He nodded. "They're already scouting buyers." One name came up twice: Carter Hale. Sound familiar? My mind flashed back to the cafe by the river. Yes, she called him Carter. Ruben's expression darkened. "He's under investigation for financial fraud. This runs deeper than you think." I felt the familiar burn of betrayal, but this time it didn't paralyze me, it focused me. "Then let's make them believe I'm giving up," I said. Ruben raised an eyebrow, meaning, "I'll tell them I'm selling the house myself. If Vanessa thinks she's losing control, she'll panic and make a mistake." He smiled, the kind that meant approval. "You sure you've never done this before?" Over the next few days, I began my performance. I called Ethan one morning, keeping my voice calm, even cheerful. "Honey, I've been thinking. Maybe it's time I downsize. The Magnolia house is too big for one person. I found a realtor." He hesitated. "Mom, that's sudden." "Well, you and Vanessa are busy. I might as well make changes while I still can." I could almost hear the alarm bells going off in his head. Within an hour, Vanessa texted me. "Are you serious about selling the house Ethan just told me? Let's talk before you do anything rash." Rash. The word made me laugh. I typed back. "Already signed with a realtor. A man named Ruben Perez. He's handling everything." Ruben chuckled when he read it later. "You just threw a grenade in their living room." And he was right. 2 days later, Vanessa showed up unannounced. Her perfume hit me before her voice did, floral, expensive, suffocating. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, smile tight. "So you're selling the house?" "Yes," I said simply. Without talking to us first. Why would I? It's my house. Her jaw clenched. You can't just... She stopped herself, recalibrating her tone. What I mean is that's a big decision. It's emotional. You might regret it. I tilted my head. Funny. You didn't seem concerned about my emotions when you left me at the airport. Her smile faltered. That was a misunderstanding. I took a slow sip of tea. You misunderstand a lot of things, Vanessa. Ownership, respect, decency. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through. Finally, she said, Ethan's been under a lot of pressure. If you sell this house now, it could complicate things. I'm sure it will, I said, and closed the door gently in her face. Later that night, Ruben called. She's spooked. I tracked an email from her to Carter. She's asking how to pause the mortgage transfer. She knows the walls are closing in. I smiled into the darkness. Good. Let them feel a fraction of the panic they caused. But Ethan wasn't silent for long. He showed up 2 days later looking exhausted, tie crooked eyes red. Mom, can we talk? We sat in the living room, the same place he used to do his homework as a boy. Vanessa told me you're selling the house, he began. Look, I know we screwed up okay, but we're trying to fix it. By hiding fraud behind my back, I asked. He rubbed his face, groaning. You don't get it, Mom. It's not that simple. Vanessa's company is our future. We just needed a boost. So you forged my signature for a boost. His eyes darted away. I didn't know she was doing that. It was the kind of half-truth cowards tell themselves to sleep at night. You knew enough, I said quietly. And you said nothing. He looked up, then desperate. Mom, please don't do this. If you sell the house now, we'll lose everything. I stood up slowly. Then maybe it's time you learn what losing feels like. That night I sat with Ruben at the diner going over final details. The fake sale documents are ready, he said. Once Vanessa tries to interfere, we'll have everything we need, signatures, timestamps, her emails. Outside thunder rolled in the distance. It felt fitting. Ruben, I said, when this is over, what happens to them? That depends, he said. If we play this right, they won't just lose the house. They'll face federal charges. I looked out the window at the rain beginning to fall, reflecting the neon lights in trembling colors. Then let's make sure it's right. He nodded, and for the first time, in a long time, I allowed myself a thin, cold smile. They thought I was the weakest piece on the board, but they forgot in chess it's the quiet queen that ends the game. The morning of the hearing arrived gray and windless, the kind of Charleston morning where the air feels heavy with rain that never comes. I dressed the way I used to before client audits, navy suit, pearl necklace, hair tied back, glasses polished, the uniform of composure. Outside, the courthouse steps gleamed with dampness. Reporters gathered at the bottom, though they didn't know the full story yet. To them, it was just another property dispute. Inside, the air conditioning hummed over the buzz of low conversation. Ethan sat 2 rows ahead with his lawyer's shoulders stiff. He turned once, meeting my eyes with a look that flickered between guilt and fear. Vanessa sat beside him, immaculate as always, white blouse, diamond studs, calm mask in place. She whispered something to her attorney and smirked. That same smirk she gave me the day she accidentally called me old-fashioned at Thanksgiving. Ruben leaned toward me. Ready as I'll ever be, I said. My voice was steady, colder than I expected. When the judge entered the room, fell silent. Case 347B, Langford versus Langford, allegation of fraudulent property use. Vanessa's lawyer started first. His voice was smooth, almost lazy. Your Honor, this is a family misunderstanding. My client's mother-in-law consented to the mortgage, but given her age and recent memory lapses, perhaps she... I felt the heat rise to my face. Memory lapses. That was their angle. Discredit the old woman. Objection, Gregory interrupted sharply. There is no medical evidence supporting cognitive impairment. In fact, we have documentation proving Mrs. Langford's signature was forged. The judge turned to him. Proceed. Gregory stood calm and deliberate like a surgeon preparing an incision. He lifted a folder. Exhibit A, a copy of the mortgage application. Exhibit B, handwriting analysis, showing significant discrepancies between the applicant's signature and Mrs. Langford's verified financial documents. He handed the papers to the bailiff, who carried them to the bench. The judge examined them briefly, then looked toward Vanessa. Mrs. Langford Turner, Do you have a response?" Her attorney rose again. "We contest the handwriting claim. The signature was given with consent during a refinancing session. My client will testify to that." Vanessa stood smiling faintly. "Your Honor, Maggie knew everything. We discussed it over dinner one night. She even said, 'If it helps Ethan, do what you must.' She's always been generous." I leaned forward. "Generous, yes. Foolish, no." A murmur rippled through the room. The judge silenced it with a sharp look. "Mrs. Langford, you'll have your turn to speak." Gregory pressed a button on his laptop. "Your Honor, Exhibit C security footage from the First Federal Bank dated 7 months ago." On the screen, grainy footage showed Vanessa at the counter flipping through papers. The teller pointed to a line and Vanessa nodded before signing. She handed over an ID mine. My stomach turned. I hadn't realized how deep the deception went. The judge's voice hardened. "That identification appears to be your mother-in-law's driver's license, Mrs. Langford Turner. Care to explain?" Vanessa's lawyer stood quickly. "This is taken out of context," No, Gregory interrupted, his voice cutting through. "Context is exactly what this is about." Reuben stepped forward, then calm but commanding. "Your Honor, if I may." The judge frowned. "And you are Reuben Perez, federal investigator, the supposed buyer of the Langford property." Gasps filled the courtroom. Vanessa's face drained of color. Ethan turned toward her slowly, confusion spreading across his features. "I've been investigating Langford Travels for financial misconduct," Reuben continued. "The mortgage in question was part of a laundering scheme tied to false travel invoices and offshore accounts. Mrs. Langford cooperated fully to expose it." The judge's gavel hit the bench once sharp as a gunshot. "Enough. I've heard enough." Ethan slumped in his chair. "Vanessa, tell me this isn't true." But Vanessa just stared straight ahead, her mouth slightly open, breathing shallow. Her hands, those manicured hands, trembled as she whispered, "I did it for us." "For us?" Ethan's voice cracked. "You forged my mother's name. You stole her home." The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Langford, do you wish to address the court before I rule?" I stood smoothing the hem of my jacket. My voice came out quiet but clear. "I built my life on numbers, Your Honor. Numbers don't lie. People do. My son and his wife believed love made me blind, that family gave them permission to use me as collateral. They were wrong. Family isn't a trademark you can steal." For a moment, no one breathed. Even the ceiling fan seemed to pause. The judge nodded slowly. "The property and all related assets revert solely to Mrs. Langford. Mrs. Vanessa Turner Langford will face criminal charges for fraud and forgery. The court will issue immediate seizure orders for the associated business accounts." Vanessa's composure cracked. "You can't do this," she screamed. "You can't just take everything." The judge replied evenly, "I'm not taking it. You gave it away when you crossed that line." Ethan covered his face with his hands. His voice came out small. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time I saw the scared boy who once promised to take care of me. But that boy was long gone. "Maybe not," I said softly. "But you let it happen. That's worse." I gathered my papers and turned toward the exit. Every step echoed in the silent courtroom. Reuben held the door open for me. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I'm fine," I said, but my voice trembled just slightly. I just never realized justice could sound so quiet. Outside, the storm had finally broken. Rain poured down in thick, relentless sheets, washing the courthouse steps clean. I tilted my face toward it, letting the drops sting my skin, and whispered, "Let it all be washed away." Behind me, Vanessa's cries faded into the thunder. Ahead, the rain shimmered like freedom. They thought I'd crumble when they took everything, but all they did was strip away the last thing holding me back. The courthouse felt smaller as I walked out, though maybe it was just the weight lifting off my chest. For months I'd felt like a ghost haunting my own life, unseen, unheard, unpaid. Now I was simply free. Reuben and I crossed the street to the diner across from the courthouse. The neon sign buzzed faintly, flickering between O-Pen and Pen. We sat in a corner booth, the same kind I used to take Ethan to when he was little. I ordered black coffee, no sugar. It tasted bitter and perfect. Reuben placed a thin envelope on the table. "This is yours," he said. "Certified deed transfer, final copy. No liens, no disputes, no shadows." I traced the seal with my thumb. I thought I'd feel angry or vindicated, but mostly, I feel tired. He smiled softly. That's what winning honestly feels like. I looked out the window. Across the street, Vanessa was being led to a waiting car, her white blouse clinging to her shoulders in the rain. Ethan followed behind, drenched and wordless. For a second, our eyes met through the glass, mother and son, separated, not by distance but by consequence. He looked like a boy again, lost. I raised my coffee cup slightly, not in forgiveness, but in farewell. Weeks passed. The house became quiet again, no echo of Vanessa's heels on the floorboards, no forced laughter from the dining table. I boxed up what was left of their mess and sent it to storage. The magnolia tree outside bloomed early that year. Maybe it sensed the change. One evening, a small envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a child's handwriting. Grandma, Mom says you're mad, but I think you're brave. You taught me that being kind doesn't mean being blind. Ava. My chest tightened, and for the first time in a long time I cried, not from loss but from something cleaner. Release. I sold the Charleston house soon after and moved to Savannah, rented a modest apartment above a bakery that smelled like vanilla and rain. I started teaching basic accounting to local women, widows, retirees, anyone who'd ever been told they weren't smart enough to handle money. Some nights Reuben stopped by with takeout. We didn't talk much about the past. We didn't have to. Once he said, "You know, most people wouldn't have fought back." I smiled, sipping my tea. Most people don't realize silence is a weapon if you aim it right. He laughed quietly, and I thought maybe, just maybe, there was room in my life for something gentle again. On my desk sat a new binder labeled in bold red letters, Second Act, inside notes for a foundation helping seniors protect their finances. My revenge now sharpened into purpose. They took my house, my peace, my trust, and thought they'd won. But all they did was teach me how to build something unbreakable. If you've ever been treated like you didn't matter, remember, this silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. I lost everything I thought defined me, but in that loss I found something better: peace, clarity, and the power to start again. So tell me, have you ever felt like the outsider in your own family? If you have, you're not alone. Hit like if you believe dignity is worth fighting for, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like mine. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destruction, it's about rebuilding stronger than before.